oh, we'll water it every 5 days, and then somebody will be like, oh, well, actually, I've been watering it for 5 days and my plant is not happy. What do I do? Am I overwatering it? Am I underwatering it? And it really could be either. Hi friends, and welcome to Green by Carlos. My name is Carlos, and today we're going to talk about caring for Monstera Deliciosas. Now, before we get started, I did want to really quickly say a huge thank you to my 1,000 subscribers. If you have not done so yet, please make sure to subscribe and join this beautiful crew. So let's get started. Monsteras have become so popular in the last 5 to 10 years. They have these big, beautiful leaves. They get splits on them and are sometimes called the Swiss cheese plant. So personally, it took me a while to get this plant. I actually received this one as a gift from a guy that I was dating. That didn't work out so well, but luckily the plants have worked out great. And I've split them and propagated them, and I now have 4 different Monstera plants. I know there are tons and tons and tons of plant care videos for Monsteras, and the reason I wanted to make this was because I had a friend reach out to me. She just got a brand new Monstera, but was very overwhelmed with the amount of information out there on how to care for them. So I wanted to put together a really easy 3-step on how to care for your Monsteras. We are going to cover the soil that you need for Monsteras, the type of light that is best to grow Monsteras, and finally, the watering habits that this plant will like, which I know is a challenging one for all of us. Now, if you're interested, I'm going to throw in a little tip at the very end of the video to see how you can help your Monstera grow the biggest foliage with hopefully some splits in them. So if you want to go the extra mile, stick around till the end. Now, as we start talking about the plant care, I do always love to start by exploring where these plants are native to. Monsteras are native to the Central America region. They love that humid jungle environment. They're actually trailing plants, which means that they obviously grow from the soil, and then they usually seek out some sort of tree to climb up on. With that being said, we can jump into the soil that a Monstera likes. Monsteras are not too picky when it comes to soil. I personally like to use just straight out of the bag, and I personally like to add a little bit of perlite to mine. And it's really going to depend on the brand that you buy, but ultimately how I like to test is if you grab a clump of the soil and you kind of press it together, if you want it to keep its shape, but then you also want it to break away pretty easily. If you have a soil that you can compact down, but then it's hard to break apart, then it likely means that the dirt is too dense. You'll see this a lot with gardening soils. What that means is that it's going to retain a lot of water, it's not going to dry out very evenly, and it can cause root rot for your potted plants. So we don't want that in that situation. You definitely want to add perlite. I would say add about ½ a cup at a time. Mix it in until you're able to get this texture of soil. With soil in mind, one other thing that I really want to mention is repotting. Like when I get new plants, I'm always tempted to repot them right away because it's kind of fun and it's exciting. But repotting is stressful for plants, so I would say avoid it unless you absolutely need to. And a good way to check is to see if, first of all, if the soil is no good. So if it looks completely dry, it has become like one solid block. A lot of times that soil will not absorb water. In the same instance, if it looks like a lot of roots are coming out of the drainage holes, then it means that it is likely root bound, and you would also want to repot it to something bigger so that the roots have a little more space. So do not repot unless you absolutely need to. And if you don't have to repot, then don't even worry about the soil. And that is really it when it comes to soil. Again, you can use just straight out of the bag houseplant soil. Do a little test to determine whether you need to add some perlite or not. The next thing we're going to talk about is the light. So Monsteras do like bright light. The more light they get, the bigger their leaves will be. So if we go back to thinking where they're native to, they are a trailing plant. They will continue to climb up to find brighter light, but they'll always be in the shadow of a tree. What this means is that they don't get that much direct light, and that their leaves can burn. So their leaves can get sunburns and will cause little brown spots. And these little brown spots, once you get them, no matter how healthy your plant is going forward, they'll forever be there as an ugly reminder of our mishaps, you know. So, and that happens to the best of us. I have this leaf here that got pretty crushed and beat up while I was moving this leaf from one side of my apartment to the other. But we live and we learn, right? And so Monsteras really love bright, indirect light. So the more indirect light you can give it, the bigger the leaves will grow, the happier the plant will be with some indirect light. So I would say high indirect light, low to medium direct light is their ideal situation. With that being said, Monsteras are pretty hardy plants. Monsteras will survive in low to medium indirect light, but you'll notice that their growth will be a lot slower and that their new foliage will be relatively small and likely will not have any slits in the leaves. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now watering. I know this one is always a really tricky one because most people will be like, oh, we'll water every 5 days, and then somebody will be like, oh, well, actually, I've been watering it for every 5 days and my plant is not happy. What do I do? Am I overwatering it? Am I underwatering it? And it really could be either. So I'm not the biggest fan of telling people how many days in between, at least not straight away. What I personally prefer is when you have a new plant, you really should get to know that plant and how it absorbs water. How much water you give it and how often is really gonna depend based on how much light it's getting, the size of the pot that it's getting, as well as your soil. So what I like to do is I typically use just my index finger to feel about the first ½ inch of the soil. What we're looking for is soil that is moist to dry, definitely not damp. If it's damp, you don't want to water your plant. If it's leaning towards more of the drier, moist side, then you will want to water it. If you're leaning on the edge and you're not 100% sure, then I would say just wait a couple days, maybe a day or two. Your plant will not die if you miss 1 day of watering. So then I would say it's always usually better to err on the side of being a little drier than a little wetter. Now with time, you will get to know how often you should be watering your plants, and then you won't have to play with dirt as much, even though I have a really bad habit of always touching soil. I'll even go to my friend's house and I'll see a plant and be like, oh my god, your plant is so cute, and then I'll touch the soil. It's really a bad habit because nobody wants to be told that their plants need to be watered. But it's the best way to get to know your plant. It truly is. I have this one right here in a spot that has about medium indirect light, and it's a pot in this size. But for this, I water about every 5 days, 5 to 7 days during the summer, and then closer to 9 days in the winter. I have this bigger one right here, which is a big plastic pot, and this one I actually water probably every 7 to 9 days in the summer, and sometimes even every other week in the winter. But again, the best way to know is just to feel the soil. If the soil is still damp, your plant does not need any more water. And really that is about it when it comes to watering. Feel the first ½ inch of soil and make sure that it is slightly moist on the drier side, and you can water your plant. And then you'll get to know it and you don't have to get your fingers dirty, or you can if you really want to. So now, make sure you stick around because I still have to tell you guys the tip on how to get your foliage to be as big as possible. I really have 2 tips. So number 1, you can see this long stick thing right here, which is a moss pole. I personally dislike moss poles. I think they're pretty ugly. So aesthetically, they are not my favorite, but they are a really great addition to any trailing plants, especially Monstera plants. So Monstera plant was actually the first plant that I ever bought a moss pole for, just because I don't personally like them. The purpose of this is to give them something to grasp onto, and that way they can grow vertically. Again, when they grow vertically, they get bigger leaves and hopefully will get nicer splits on them. What they do is you'll see the air roots start to cling on to the moss poles. The moss poles, I like to keep it somewhat moist from time to time, but really you'll see this air root grasp on, and once it feels that moist moss pole, it's actually going to let out a real root, which is more of what we're used to seeing. So I'll try to show it there. And what that allows it to also use this root to soak up water and nutrients so that the leaves that it's growing can be bigger and more beautiful. And then last is that I also really love to spray my plants. I have this little sprayer that I use, and I spray my plants probably every day, but it's not the most consistent. This really allows Monsteras to help control their humidity, especially in the winter when it can get really dry. These are tropical plants that love moist weather. You also don't have to beat yourself up if you're not able to do it. I would say I like to do it every day, but then I'll go on streaks where I completely forget and I just won't spray them for a while. But especially with the moss pole, I also like to spray the moss pole so that it can stay relatively moist. It's the best way that I found to keep these moss poles somewhat moist. If you have a better idea, a better strategy that you use, please share it in the comment below. I would love to hear it. And also, if you have a better looking option to a moss pole, I would also love to hear it because I really don't like them, but my Monsteras do. And then if you have any other tips and tricks that you like to use for your Monsteras, also leave them in the comments below because I would love to hear them and hopefully make my plants even better. That is all. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. You can give it a thumbs down if you dislike it. It's at least good to know. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you next time.